Imagine you're in a crowded room. Music is playing, people are laughing, conversations hum and swirl around you like a current. You're holding a drink, smiling, nodding. You might even be talking. From the outside, you are a perfect picture of social engagement. You are connected. But inside, behind your own eyes, there is a profound and chilling silence. It's the feeling of being encased in invisible glass, able to see and hear the world, but unable to truly touch it or be touched by it. You look at the faces around you, and they seem like actors in a play for which you have forgotten the script. You are surrounded by people, and you have never felt more alone. Or imagine a quieter, more modern version of the same scene. You're at home, the room lit only by the cool blue glow of your phone. You are scrolling through a feed that represents, in theory, the greatest miracle of connection in human history. Here are hundreds, even thousands of your friends. You see their weddings, their newborns, their promotions, their perfectly filtered vacations. You can like their lives, leave a comment, send a heart emoji. You have access to more people, more instantly than any emperor of old could have dreamed. Yet as you scroll, a familiar hollow ache begins to spread through your chest. It is a feeling of profound, almost cosmic distance. Each happy, curated image serves not as a point of connection, but another brick in the wall of your own isolation. This is the great defining paradox of our age. We are the most connected, lonely generation in the history of the world. We have built a global village, and yet we have never felt more homeless. We have filled our lives with communication tools, but we have forgotten how to have conversations. We have mistaken the map of connection for the territory of intimacy, and we are now starving to death in a world overflowing with empty calories of social information. We are told this is a simple problem with a simple solution. We are told it's about too much screen time. We are told we need to put ourselves out there more, join a club, learn new social skills. But these explanations are like telling someone with a deep systemic infection that they should simply wash their hands more often. They address the surface while ignoring the sickness raging beneath. The loneliness you feel is not a personal failure. It is not a sign that you are broken or unlovable. It is a rational, healthy, and necessary response to an increasingly sick and inhuman environment. Your loneliness is a symptom. It is the fever that signals a deeper infection. It is the pain in your phantom limb, the ache for a part of our collective humanity that has been amputated. What if this epidemic is not a crisis of social skills, but a crisis of meaning? What if the problem is not that we are disconnected from each other, but that we have become disconnected from the very things that make connection possible and worthwhile in the first place? We live in a world that has systematically dismantled the traditional structures of belonging, the tight-knit communities, the multi-generational households, the shared rituals, the stable, lifelong careers, and has replaced them with a hyper-individualistic, transactional, and transient social landscape. We are taught to see ourselves not as members of a tribe, but as entrepreneurs of a personal brand. Our relationships are increasingly managed through the lens of cost-benefit analysis and personal optimization. We network, we don't make friends. We date through algorithms that treat potential partners like products to be sorted and selected. We perform a version of ourselves online, a carefully curated avatar, and then wonder why we feel unseen. We have created a world where everyone is a commodity, every interaction is a transaction, and every relationship is a temporary contract subject to review. In this world, is it any wonder we are lonely? To be truly seen, you must be willing to be vulnerable. To truly belong, you must be willing to commit. To truly be intimate, you must be willing to risk the messy, unpredictable, and often inconvenient reality of other people. But our modern world is an architecture of control, designed to shield us from all of that. It offers connection without commitment, intimacy without vulnerability, and community without obligation. It offers the illusion of the thing without the substance, and we are left with the ache of the absence. This is more than just a philosophical problem. This is a public health emergency. Chronic loneliness has been shown to be as lethal as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. It is more damaging to our health than obesity. It ravages our immune systems, increases our risk of heart disease, dementia, and depression. It is a slow-acting poison that is silently killing us. So the question we must ask is not simply, how can I be less lonely? That is like asking how to lower a fever without diagnosing the illness. The real urgent and world-altering question is this: what is the deeper sickness for which this loneliness is merely the symptom? What is the fundamental poison in our cultural water that is making us all so sick, and is there an antidote to be found? The sickness that manifests as loneliness is not a virus that suddenly appeared. It is the end stage of a philosophical and economic project that has been centuries in the making. The hidden problem is that we have successfully built the world we asked for, a world of supreme atomized individualism. We have deconstructed the village and have been left standing alone in the rubble, calling the ruins freedom. The roots of this crisis are deep, entwined in the very DNA of our modern Western identity. The philosophical groundwork was laid during the Enlightenment. Thinkers like John Locke and Adam Smith championed the individual as the primary unit of society. The old binding ties of community, tradition, and religion were recast as oppressive chains, and freedom was redefined as freedom from obligation, from dependence on others. The ideal human was no longer the embedded member of a tribe, but the rational, self-interested, and autonomous individual. This was a necessary and powerful revolution against tyranny, but it contained a hidden poison. In freeing the individual from the oppressive aspects of the collective, we also began to sever the nourishing roots of genuine belonging. This philosophical shift found its perfect partner in industrial capitalism. The market thrives on the atomized individual. A person deeply embedded in a strong, self-sufficient community is a bad consumer. A community that shares resources, provides mutual support, and finds its identity in shared practices rather than purchased goods is a direct threat to a system that requires perpetual growth. The sociologist Karl Marx described this process as alienation. He argued that capitalism doesn't just alienate us from the product of our labor, but from each other. We cease to see our fellow humans as comrades in a shared existence, and begin to see them as competitors in a zero-sum game. Every relationship becomes transactional, measured by the metric of, what can I get out of this? This logic has now seeped out of the marketplace and has colonized our entire social world. We invest in relationships. We speak of social capital. We date to maximize our return on investment.
This economic and philosophical framework created the perfect conditions for what the physician and author Gabor Mate calls a toxic culture. Mate argues that our society systematically frustrates our most fundamental biological human needs for the sake of economic efficiency. We are creatures who evolved over millions of years to live in small, stable, interdependent tribes. We are hardwired for close physical proximity, for constant casual social touch, for multi-generational support systems, for shared rituals, and for a deep sense of belonging to a place and a people. Our modern world is a direct assault on every single one of these needs. We are encouraged to be geographically mobile for our careers, severing our ties to place and family. We live in isolated nuclear family units, often in sprawling suburbs designed for cars, not for casual human interaction. We outsource the care of our children and our elderly to institutions, breaking the chain of generational connection. We replace face-to-face interaction with the disembodied, decontextualized communication of social media. We have, in Mate's view, created an environment that is as unhealthy for humans as a polluted river is for fish. The fish get sick, and we get lonely. The loneliness is not a personal pathology. It is a normal, adaptive response to an abnormal, pathological environment. On a psychological level, this toxic culture fosters a particularly corrosive form of narcissism. Not the grandiose, look-at-me narcissism of myth, but a quieter, more desperate kind. The philosopher Byung-Chul Han calls our era the burnout society. He argues that we have moved from a disciplinary society, where we were controlled by external prohibitions, to an achievement society, where we are driven by the internal command to achieve. The modern subject is not oppressed by an external master, but is his own slave driver. We are entrepreneurs of the self, constantly optimizing, branding, and performing. This creates a state of profound self-obsession. We become so focused on the project of me that we lose the capacity for genuine, empathetic engagement with the other. Other people become either tools for our self-advancement, audiences for our performance, or competitors in our race. This is the death of real connection, which requires the ability to temporarily forget the self and enter into the world of another. The hidden problem, then, is a perfect storm of disconnection. Our philosophy has idolized the isolated individual. Our economy has monetized that isolation. Our culture has normalized it, and our psychology has adapted to it by retreating into the prison of the self. We are living in the logical conclusion of our own ideals. We have achieved the autonomy we craved, but we have discovered that the perfectly autonomous self is a profoundly lonely one. The sickness is not that we have lost the ability to connect. It is that we have built a world that is actively hostile to the very conditions that make connection possible. And the unseen consequences of living in this sterile, disconnected landscape are not just a feeling of sadness, but a slow, creeping unraveling of our individual and collective sanity. The consequences of this systemic sickness are not abstract or philosophical. They are written into the very fabric of our daily lives, our bodies, and our societies. The loneliness epidemic is the fever, but the infection is ravaging the entire system, leading to a cascade of crises that we often fail to connect back to their source. The first and most visceral consequence is the collapse of our physical and mental health. The human nervous system is a social organ. It is designed to be regulated in the presence of other trusted nervous systems. From the moment we are born, our sense of safety and well-being is calibrated through physical touch, eye contact, and empathetic attunement with our caregivers. When we are deprived of this, as our culture systematically does, our nervous systems enter a chronic, low-grade state of threat, or fight or flight. This is the biological reality of loneliness. It floods our bodies with stress hormones like cortisol, which, over time, leads to chronic inflammation, the root cause of a staggering number of modern diseases. This is why loneliness is a greater risk factor for mortality than obesity. It is literally killing us. Mentally, this state of chronic, unregulated threat manifests as a massive spike in anxiety, depression, and addiction. We are anxious because our bodies feel fundamentally unsafe and alone. We are depressed because our deepest need for belonging is unmet. And we turn to addiction, to substances, to work, to 1,000 forms of digital distraction in a desperate, tragic attempt to self-soothe the pain of our disconnection. The second, and perhaps most dangerous consequence, is the decay of our social and political fabric. A society of lonely, atomized individuals is a society that is ripe for extremism and polarization. People who lack a strong sense of belonging in healthy, organic communities become desperate for it. This creates a vacuum that is easily filled by the artificial, high-intensity belonging offered by radical ideologies, conspiracy theories, and online hate groups. These groups provide what the mainstream culture has failed to: a clear sense of identity, a powerful in-group to belong to, a shared enemy to unite against, and a simple, overarching narrative that makes sense of a confusing world. The lonely individual, starved for connection, is the ideal recruit for the demagogue. The internet has supercharged this process, allowing people to find their tribe of the disaffected, reinforcing their echo chambers and solidifying a sense of us versus them. The political polarization that feels like it is tearing our societies apart is not, at its root, a crisis of ideas. It is a crisis of belonging.
We are not just disagreeing on policy, we are fighting a tribal war because our true, healthy tribes have vanished. The third consequence is the erosion of our collective resilience. A healthy community is a shock absorber. When a crisis hits, a natural disaster, an economic downturn, a personal tragedy, a connected community can absorb the impact through mutual support, shared resources, and collective action. But in a society of isolated individuals, every shock is felt at the level of the individual household, with no safety net. We are left to fend for ourselves, a reality that only deepens our sense of anxiety and insecurity. This lack of resilience makes us brittle. We become more fearful, more risk-averse, and more dependent on large, impersonal institutions, the state, the corporation, to manage our lives because the organic, local systems of support have withered away. We trade the robust, decentralized strength of a community for the fragile, centralized control of a bureaucracy.
The final consequence of this sickness is the loss of our shared reality. Connection is, at its most fundamental level, the process through which we co-create a world. We build a shared understanding of reality through conversation, through storytelling, through debate, through shared rituals and experiences. When we retreat into our isolated bubbles, this shared world begins to fracture. We each inhabit our own personalized, algorithmically curated reality. My news feed, my social circle, and my information sources paint a picture of the world that can be completely unrecognizably different from yours. We lose the common ground, the shared set of facts and values that is necessary for a functioning democracy and a cohesive society. We cease to be citizens engaged in a common project and become instead a collection of isolated monads shouting at each other across an unbridgeable digital divide. The invisible glass of loneliness that once surrounded the individual now surrounds entire demographic groups. We are living in a fractured, fragile, and profoundly unhealthy world. The unseen consequences have become our lived reality. The quiet, personal ache of the lonely individual has become the loud, chaotic roar of a society tearing itself apart. The sickness is no longer hidden. It is in the open, and it is demanding a diagnosis and a cure. The cure for this systemic sickness cannot be a pill, an app, or a simple life hack. The solution must be as radical and as deep as the problem itself. It is a rebellion. It is a conscious, deliberate, and often difficult act of swimming against the current of our entire culture. It is the choice to reject the myth of the autonomous individual and to begin, brick by brick, the sacred work of rebuilding the village, starting in the landscape of your own life. The first act of this rebellion is a radical shift in your personal priorities. You must consciously demote the values that the toxic culture has placed at the top. Individual achievement, career advancement, material acquisition, and elevate the values it has dismissed. Deep connection, community contribution, and vulnerable, authentic presence. This is not a matter of abandoning your ambitions, but of recontextualizing them. You must begin to make decisions not based on the question, what will this do for me, but on the question, will this lead to a more connected life? This might mean choosing a job that pays less but allows you more time for your family and friends. It might mean turning down a promotion that requires you to move away from a community where you have deep roots. It means treating your friendships and relationships not as a pleasant hobby to be fit in around the edges of your real life, but as the very center, the non-negotiable core of your existence. This is a quiet, internal revolution against the logic of the market, a declaration that your soul is not for sale. The second act of rebellion is to reclaim the local and the physical. Our culture pushes us towards the global and the digital, a disembodied world of scalable, frictionless connections. The antidote is to anchor yourself in the messy, inconvenient, and profoundly nourishing reality of a specific place and the people in it. You must become a localist. This means intentionally investing your time, attention, and resources in your immediate geographical vicinity. Shop at the local store, even if it's less convenient than Amazon. Go to the neighborhood park instead of scrolling through Instagram. Get to know the names of your neighbors, start a community garden, join a local sports team. The goal is to move from being a transient consumer of a place to being an embedded citizen of it. This practice rebuilds the soft infrastructure of community. The casual, unplanned interactions, the shared spaces, the sense of mutual recognition that our suburban, car-centric world has destroyed. It is the slow, unglamorous work of reweaving the social fabric, one conversation at a time. The third, and perhaps most challenging act of rebellion, is to practice the lost art of vulnerability. The Achievement Society trains us to perform our strengths and hide our weaknesses. We curate a personal brand of competence, success, and happiness. This performance is the very essence of the invisible glass that separates us. The rebellion is to intentionally and strategically shatter that glass. This does not mean oversharing or emotional dumping. It means having the courage to reveal your authentic, imperfect self to a trusted few. It means admitting when you're struggling. It means asking for help. It means sharing your fears and your failures, not just your triumphs. Every act of authentic vulnerability is an invitation. It signals to others that it is safe for them to take off their own masks. It is the only way to move a relationship from the superficial realm of networking to the sacred ground of true intimacy. One of the most powerful acts of community building you can engage in is to gather a small group of people and create a space where the sole purpose is to tell the truth about your lives. This rebellion is not easy. It will require you to be a conscious objector to the norms of your society. You will be choosing the slow and the deep in a world that worships the fast and the shallow. You will be choosing the messy and the local in a world that glorifies the clean and the global. You will be choosing the vulnerable and the authentic in a world that rewards the polished and the performed. There will be friction. You will feel like you are swimming upstream. But with each act of rebellion, you are not just healing your own loneliness. You are creating a pocket of sanity, a micro-community of warmth and connection in a cold and fractured world. You become a social healer, demonstrating a different way of being that is profoundly attractive to others who are suffering from the same sickness. This is how a new world is born, not through grand top-down programs, but through countless, courageous, local acts of defiant connection. And this difficult, sacred work is what prepares you for the final and most essential truth of our human nature.
The ultimate truth is not that we need community to survive. The ultimate truth is that we are community. The entire concept of a separate, isolated, autonomous self is a myth. This is the profound illusion that our philosophical, economic, and cultural history has sold us. We have been taught to believe that we are born as discrete, individual entities, and that we then move out into the world and form relationships and communities, like billiard balls colliding and arranging themselves on a table. But this is a complete inversion of reality. The truth, supported by modern neuroscience, evolutionary biology, and ancient wisdom, is that we are born out of connection, we are shaped by connection, and our very sense of self is a product of our relationships. You are not a billiard ball. You are a single, intricate knot in a vast, interconnected net of being. The idea of you as a separate entity simply doesn't hold up to scrutiny. Your language? You learned it from others. Your beliefs, shaped by your family and culture. Your gut microbiome, which profoundly influences your mood and health, it is a community of organisms. The very neurons in your brain, they were physically shaped and pruned by your earliest interactions with your caregivers, a process called interpersonal neurobiology. You are not a self-contained unit.
You are a relational being to your very core. Your identity is not found inside your own skull. It is found in the space between you and others. This is what the African concept of Ubuntu expresses so beautifully. I am because we are. My humanity is not my own private possession. It is inextricably bound up in yours. The loneliness epidemic is the pain of a society that has forgotten this. We are all walking around feeling the ache of a phantom limb because we have been tricked into believing that we are meant to be amputees. We have been suffering under the delusion of separateness. The final liberation is the experiential realization of this truth. It is the shift in identity from me to we. This is not about sacrificing your individuality. It is about discovering that your truest, most vibrant individuality can only be expressed and realized in relationship to others. Just as a single note only finds its true meaning and beauty in the context of a chord, your self only finds its fullest expression in the context of a community. When this realization lands, it reframes the entire project of your life. The rebellion is no longer just a strategy to feel less lonely. It becomes a joyful, sacred duty to live in accordance with your true nature. Building community is no longer a chore. It is the act of coming home to yourself. Practicing vulnerability is no longer a risk. It is the act of revealing the truth of your interconnected being. Contributing to the well-being of your local place is no longer an act of charity. It is an act of tending to the larger body of which you are a single vital cell. Look back at the person in the crowded room or the person scrolling alone in the blue light. The pain they felt was the pain of a profound ontological error. They were a wave in the ocean that had momentarily forgotten it was the ocean, and in that forgetting felt terrifyingly small, separate, and alone, destined to crash upon the shore and disappear. The ultimate truth is that you are the ocean. The feeling of separateness was a dream. The loneliness was the alarm clock trying to wake you from that dream. The sickness was not your own. It was the sickness of a culture that had fallen asleep and was dreaming of a world of disconnected things. Your healing and the healing of our world is not found in finding the right connections. It is found in remembering that you are and have always been connection itself. The final freedom is the freedom from the prison of the separate self. It is the profound, calming, and world-altering joy of dissolving back into the human family, of realizing that you are not and have never been alone. Your work is to live this truth, to embody it, and to create spaces where others can remember it too. This is not just how we will cure the loneliness epidemic. This is how we will remember how to be human.